All right, y'all, we back with another reaction right here on ABP Reactions. And right now, a bombshell court decision has rocked the David murder case, man. Let's find out what that is.
Accused murderer David Anthony Burke, a.k.a. David, was back in an LA courtroom today, and this has shaken up the entire case schedule. What exactly happened? What can we expect next? And what does this mean for the defense and the prosecution? Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, we got a court hearing in the David case that happened today. We have a reporter, an investigative reporter in the courtroom. Going to bring her on in a minute to talk about what happened. Now remember where we're at. The 21-year-old romantic homicide singer, real name David Anthony Burke, David, is facing charges of first-degree murder, continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, and unlawful mutilation of human remains, all in connection with the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, whose decomposed, dismembered body was found in a Tesla in LA back on September 8th of last year, a Tesla reportedly registered to David out in Texas, and prosecutors have also alleged special circumstances with respect to the murder charge. That's what gets you potentially life in prison without the possibility of parole. That's what potentially gets you the death penalty, even though there's a moratorium on executions in California. Murder of a witness, murder for financial gain, lying in wait, that he used a deadly and dangerous weapon, a sharp instrument. And the ME's office concluded that Celeste's cause of death was multiple penetrating injuries. Authorities alleging that David murdered Celeste to keep her quiet, that they were in an alleged illegal sexual relationship, her being a minor, that she was going to expose him, that she was going to ruin his career, a financially lucrative career. I did whole episodes on the potential evidence establishing where he was at in his career. They also talk about these alleged text messages the day before, the night before, where she was allegedly angry with him and going to expose him. And the allegation is that he murdered her to keep her quiet. And prosecutors claim that on April 23rd, 2025, he lured Celeste to this property in LA, Hollywood Hills, stabbed her repeatedly, watched her bleed out, and then proceeded to order supplies online to engage in the dismemberment of her body and the cover-up of this alleged crime. Chainsaws, body bag, laundry bags, inflatable pool. They claim a combination of forensic evidence, surveillance footage.
This nigga is dumb as a motherfucker, man. Swear to God, this shit is going to be a movie one day, and this nigga's an idiot. There's no way to explain the idiotic... that them ordering that shit and sending it to his house, like, what? Who does this, dog?
Cellular data, DNA evidence, witness testimony, all ties him to these alleged crimes. So what happened in court today? For that, let me bring on somebody who was in that courtroom today. Investigative reporter Julia Deng is with us. Julia, so good to see you. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about this. Really appreciate it. I'm made of questions. I know this was a relatively short.
What the hell? She look like a llama. like a llama from a Disney movie.
Hearing, but very impactful, very important. First of all, how did David look? Let's start there.
A beautiful llama.
Not great, Jesse, as you can imagine. I mean, we've talked about how he actually requested a haircut last time. It doesn't look to me like he got that haircut. He walked in wearing this orange LA County jail uniform, kind of lighter than what I'm wearing right now. He had a white long-sleeved shirt underneath it. He did not look clean-shaven. Hair looked to be a little bit longer, very curly. But he was actively paying attention. You know, he was looking from attorney to attorney as they were speaking during this very brief status conference. And he did speak this morning. This was actually my first time hearing his voice live. It was brief. He just said, "Yes, Your Honor," when the judge addressed him. And it was a question about pushing back the upcoming dates in this case. So It is still, you know, a question as to whether or not this is going to trial. And the big takeaway from this morning's status conference is that we are going to...
Look like she's about to do a mukbang. Fuck all that. Put that mic down and show us the mukbang.
We're going to have to do this exercise all over again. So there's going to be another status conference June 17th. And then this preliminary hearing that we've been talking about May 26th. And as you've been reporting, Jesse, that was supposed to happen back in April. So now they've pushed that back again. That's going to be June 29th now. So David Burke was asked, are you okay with that? And
Damn, that nigga look bummy as a motherfucker. He in there going through it, man. Hey, that's what you deserve, you fuck nigga. Hey, he in there going through it. You thought this shit was a game. See, you doing all that, the music videos, acting like you know what I mean? That money got you feeling yourself. And nigga, you went too far, bro. And then, bruh, come on, man. You did the worst possible thing. Dealing with a minor, and then you killed a minor, and you finna go to jail. Oh, man, they finna play with you, man. They finna be passing you around, taking turns with your ass.
Just said, yes, Your Honor, and that he was led back out.
Okay, so I have a number of questions about this. There are those who say they wouldn't be surprised that the preliminary hearing was pushed back yet again. I mean, even if you talk about what's been reported, 40 terabytes of evidence, computers, tablets, iCloud. Even in the prosecution's brief, they talk about surveillance footage and cellular data and witnesses and different trips and all these Amazon purchases. And it's a big case, and it's one that has been investigated for quite some time. At the same time, Julia.
Look at the beak on this motherfucker right here. God damn, Toucan Sam.
I'm trying to understand why this is happening, because, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the defense who's asking now to have a delay, because weren't they the ones who said Blair Burke, his attorney, was...
Look at that motherfucker, man. That is Scottie Pippen. What is that? That motherfucker got a muscle. That motherfucker flexing.
pushing for a speedy preliminary hearing as soon as possible. And it was the idea, we're going to challenge the prosecution's evidence. We're going to challenge, because in a preliminary hearing, so everybody knows, right, the prosecution has to present, not their whole case, but sufficient evidence to establish probable cause, low standard, but say, hey, we got enough here to support these charges, to move forward towards trial. Preliminary hearing, why it's an advantage for the defense is because they can challenge that evidence. So they wanted the prosecution, hey, we want this a preliminary hearing immediately. We want to see what you got. We want to challenge it. We don't think you have a case here. We don't think he's the cause of Celeste's death. And now, and correct me if I'm wrong, are they the ones today in court saying we need a delay?
They are. That is correct. And Jesse, you're absolutely right. This boils down to evidence. So Beth Silverman, with the prosecution, she laid out how there is just voluminous evidence here. It totals, at this point, more than 40 terabytes. I mean, if you think about how much content you probably had saved on your phone, I mean, that's not even close to 1 terabyte. They
40 terabytes is crazy.
40 in this case. So Beth said this morning during this hearing, the prosecution started uploading their evidence last Thursday. And that's part of this case.
Hey, man, 40 terabytes is a lot. Listen, that gotta be, it can't just be phone footage. That's like, nigga, it gotta be music videos and all kind of shit they putting in there and incorporating. And like home security footage, all kind of shit. Cause you know how much 40 terabytes is, bro? That's a lot of shit. God damn. Look, this goddamn hard drive. This is 5 terabytes right here. This a 5 terabyte hard drive. Nigga, 40 terabytes of shit. Like, I got so much shit on this motherfucker, this shit ain't even full. And that motherfucker, 40 terabytes? The fuck do you got, man?
Have to do that. Sharing that information between both sides, that's part of discovery. So Beth says the prosecution started that last Thursday. They have only uploaded, at this point, about 10 terabytes out of that 40. And then she went on to say, I actually wrote down this direct quote from Beth Silverman this morning, it could take them months to complete discovery with this much evidence. So now the defense is pushing back. This is very much part of their strategy. This is not surprising. You know, they would benefit from having more time just to prep their case. So they said, the defense, you know, we've requested DNA evidence. We have not gotten that yet. They also said they haven't gotten the witness narratives they were hoping for. So their argument is we need more intel to prep before this can even go to a preliminary hearing.
Meaning, brother, your ass is finna be sitting in that motherfucker for about 3 to 5 years before they ready to take your ass to trial. That's what it sound like to me. Nigga, like that nigga, we got a long way to go. We got 40 terabytes we gotta run through, and we only at 10 right now as far as downloading 10. We still got to run through that shit. Then we got to run through that. 30 more. Nigga, this shit gonna take some time. And yeah, well, this trial probably ain't gonna start for about 2-3 years, man. Yep. This is a sick one right here. But I mean, damn, man, what the fuck? What? Like, all right. I don't know, man. I'm still confused by 40 terabytes. What the fuck do you got 40 terabytes of?
But the prosecution, of course, also not surprising. They're pushing back as well. They're saying, you know, is this going to be a real thing? Is June 29th going to be, they called it a go date? Or are we going to have to go through this again? Push it back again. The judge was very stern about that. She said, you know, we have to be clear. If we're setting the date for June 29th this time, if this is going to be pushed back again, a fourth time now, you know, we have to get that motion in writing. Beth Silverman says this kind of thing can go on. She's, you know, in her experience, had this kind of thing go back and forth and be delayed for years. The judge saying this morning, she promises this is not going to go on for years. So I think June 17th is going to be a sure thing for this new status conference, and then June 29th.
Well, here's what's tricky about it. It's prosecutors, seemingly, even though there was reports of multiple grand juries, and grand jury could be a way you get an official indictment. Defense doesn't have a role in it. It's a secret proceeding. You get an indictment, you move forward. If you don't go a grand jury route, and clearly there hasn't been a grand jury indictment, even though there have been reportedly grand juries impaneled to hear evidence in this case, now you have a preliminary hearing. And
what is he doing right here? Just give me my money. Y'all remember that? Just give me my money.
100%. This is where it gets complicated because the defense has an opportunity to challenge the evidence. It can get pushed back and pushed back and pushed back and delayed. And just from a point of law, I'll tell everybody, you know, that's a concern for the prosecution, right? They believe that David committed these alleged crimes. They want justice as soon as possible. They don't want to keep pushing this case along. Evidence can get stale. Witness testimony could be upended. So it's in their interest, too, to have this preliminary hearing sooner rather than later. And by the way, when you mention DNA evidence, you go back to the prosecution's
brother, it's obvious he did the shit. I don't even know. What are we questioning at this point? It's obvious as fuck he did the shit.
It says DNA evidence developed from blood stains collected from defendant's garage, which match the victim's genetic profile. So that was interesting. By the way, you mentioned witnesses. Do we have any idea, was it revealed today, any idea who these potential witnesses are?
We don't. That is one of those outstanding questions, and I think, Jesse, you actually did an entire podcast segment dedicated to this question. We don't, and it's...
A puncast? Did she say a puncast? I like that. I gotta run with that. Puncast.
Sounds like part of the defense's strategy to just stall here and buy themselves a little bit more time to prepare during this pretrial period is citing the fact that they don't have any kind of narrative relating to witnesses. They don't know who the possible witnesses might be who could be called for this case, and they don't have DNA evidence they say they've requested. But let me tell you what the prosecution did share. They say they have already shared lab reports, they have shared LAPD reports, and they've shared, again, about 10 terabytes of evidence. So if it really is 40 terabytes, that's about 25% here. And I don't know what kind of server they're uploading this to, but again, they started doing this last Thursday. So open-ended question here as to how much longer that's going to take.
Why do all newscasters sound the same? Like, why do all the anchors, they all talk the same? Even the black dudes sound like the white man. The Asian lady, Hispanic lady sounds like the white lady. Why do they all got the same voice? What is it about that? Why can't nobody just talk regular? I think we at the point in life where we cool with people just talking regular on camera. They all got that specific same sounding voice. Like, nigga, that shit only caters to old people, cuz. Talk regular, bruh.
But talking to media crews out here, we've all been speculating, you know, there's likely a lot of video content in that 40 terabyte dump. That's typically what takes up the most space. So we already know some of that video involving Celeste and David and their alleged relationship that will not be played for the jury if this eventually does go to trial.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because as we're understanding what this is, I remember in one of the initial hearings, the prosecution said they found a large volume of alleged
Bruh, nigga said she looked like an Asian worm. Look like the Asian worm. Shout out my nigga Worm, man.
child pornography on David's devices. Now, they didn't confirm that was 100% Celeste, but let's remember he is charged with a sex crime with respect to her. This alleged illegal sexual relationship is not only its own individual crime, but it goes to the murder charge. It goes to the special circumstances, because if they can prove he was having this relationship with her, didn't want it exposed, wanted to keep her quiet, she was threatening
They definitely gonna prove
that. Goes into it. And of course, I mean, there's other digital data, there's cell phone data, there's surveillance footage. By the way, just taking a quick step back, since you're our eyes and ears there, was it a packed courtroom? Like, who else was there? Was there anybody in support of David? Was Nathan Hochman there, the Los Angeles County District Attorney? Who was in that courtroom today?
It was largely media this morning. We did look around in the hallway before we even got into the status conference to see if perhaps he had any supporters. I know last time, during his last court date, David did have at least 2 friends, 2 supporters with him. There was no family present this morning, nobody for either David or Celeste. I think it was just the defendant.
Damn, ain't nobody coming to see you, Otis. Niggas ain't coming to see you, nigga. You done killed this little girl. This family ain't showing up for that shit. They like, you dumb motherfucker. Like, what the fuck we look like showing up to every time you go to court, nigga? You did it, nigga. Weirdo. Like, boy, you know you gonna get dragged. If you an artist and you show up on his side to defend him, you're going to get dragged, nigga. You cannot show up for this situation.
With his uncut hair, his orange jumpsuit, and then defense attorneys. So it was largely media in the back 2 rows in this courtroom, prosecution, defense, and it went by very quickly. They started within 5 minutes of 8:30, the scheduled start time, very clear on directions, you know, no cameras, no cell phones, and it wrapped up within about 10 to 15 minutes.
And by the way, what was his interaction like with his defense attorneys? I saw a report, I think, could be wrong, but you'll correct me if I'm wrong. Did he like wink at his defense attorney at one point? What was that interaction like?
This is a fascinating human, Jesse. If I ever have an opportunity to interview David, I've got questions for this man. He seemed incredibly comfortable sitting there. I think he was resting his elbows on the table at one point. I mentioned earlier he was listening actively to the back and forth between prosecution and defense. He was looking from attorney to attorney. At one point, I think I saw him nodding along. He made eye contact with the judge. He spoke once when he was asked if June 29th would be a go date, a good rescheduled preliminary hearing date for him. He just said, yes, Your Honor. He spoke clearly. He did not seem shaken. He did not seem like a defendant being charged with first-degree murder. And that's not it. I mean, we're calling this a murder case, but there are 2 additional charges on top of that, including continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14. And
do y'all think this nigga David gonna off himself or attempt to off himself while he's in jail? Do he give y'all that vibe of somebody who would probably like, I can't do it, man. This is this is too much. I fucked up. He probably thought he was gonna be like a martyr. He probably thought people was gonna praise him. You know what I mean? It was on point with his storyline. You know how these motherfuckers, these sickos in the head, the serial killers, like back in the day, they thought like they were gonna be like martyrs. When this story comes out, when everybody knows it's me, I will be praised. And in a way, they kind of do when you give them a movie or a series on Netflix. It's kind of like you are championing them niggas, even though you're just trying to tell their story, but you're highlighting them niggas. And I think he might be one of the motherfuckers that probably just on some sick shit. Like, people will talk about me for the ages. Not in the right light, though, but I don't know, man. He's a weirdo, so you never know how these weirdos think. Only weirdos know how weirdos think. So if you're watching this and you're a weirdo, tell us what y'all think, then I'll mess with you.
And it's not just murder, it's mutilation of that murder victim's corpse. And I know we haven't delved into this yet today because we don't yet know if the DA is going to ultimately pursue the death penalty, but that's an option in this case because of the special circumstances on top of that murder charge. And I believe, Jesse, in the state of California, you only need one special circumstance to be eligible for the death penalty. In this case, it's not one, it's not two, it is three.
And look, there is a moratorium on executions in California, but that's even besides the point. I mean, this goes to this whole idea of if
That's
they decide
correct.
to go that way, it would, prolong the trial, it would make it a little bit more complex. But you're talking about the ultimate punishment. Not surprising when you talk about this crime. Yes, he's innocent until proven guilty, 100%, but you were talking about the brutal slaying of a 14-year-old girl who was dismembered and also allegedly sexually abused. It's a really, really horrific crime. By the way, I have a couple minutes with you, Julia. You've been following this case, I believe, from the beginning. You've been following it for quite some time. As you're in that courtroom and you're listening carefully to the discussions that's happening between the attorneys and the judge, what is your biggest questions that you want answered right now? What are you looking out for in terms of the evidence? I mean, thank you for talking about the episode we did on the witnesses. I think that's a crucial discussion, whether or not it's going to be somebody like Neo Langston, or it's going to be David's family, or it's going to be the Riverside County Sheriff's deputies, or it's going to be the medical examiner or members of the medical examiner's department. I mean, you tell me what you're looking out for, what you're keeping an eye to. And
Do y'all think any of his streamer friends, y'all could go watch the reaction we did the other day with his streamer homies. Do y'all think any of his streamer homies is going to show up in defense and take the stand, or somebody, because you got to remember, they said the body was in the house while the streamers was there on the live stream. You can hear them saying, why does the house smell like that? And he's covering up saying some other shit, but the body was stinking in the house while they were doing a stream. And they were sitting up in that motherfucker. They probably, hey, we want to know, what did you see? What did you notice? Come on.
you're in an eye to as you're in court for these hearings?
Number one question, Jesse, is what you've been covering extensively. Who are the witnesses going to be? What is their testimony going to entail? I think another big question is relating to some of the more definitive language we've seen in the charging documents. How do prosecutors know, for example, that David stood by and watched Celeste bleed out? My big question is, was there some kind of home surveillance video that captured this? I mean, that wouldn't be out of the question. Many people have cameras in their homes. David was also an individual who was very comfortable around cameras. I mean, he was constantly live streaming, snapping things, recording things. Could there be footage actually showing that act? And then I also want to point out, the wording of what defense attorneys have said. They're denying the charges. David has entered a not guilty plea on all of these counts. But they're saying that he was not the cause of her death.
Interesting. So if he's saying he's not the cause and she was stabbed twice, who was the cause? And then why did you cut the body up? Make that make sense, man. Who was the cause? Is there a missing player we don't know about?
Raises the question, who was? Could there be somebody else involved? Could somebody else be charged? When I was waiting to get into the courtroom this morning, I was talking to a couple other journalists covering this case. That's what we're all wondering at this point. Who else may have helped? Who else could have been involved? And what additional cases, what additional charges and defendants could we see coming out of this? I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think this defendant is going to be one of several as Celeste and her family and her community fight for justice.
I'm so glad you mentioned this because it raises a number of different questions. I've talked about it multiple times about, is it possible a 20-year-old singer, if the allegations are true, killed this 14-year-old, took steps to dismember her body, and ultimately did it, took that alleged trip to Santa Barbara to hide evidence, sure. But is it also possible he may have had some help? I asked Nathan Hochman about this on my News Nation show, and he wouldn't obviously confirm one way or another whether they're looking into any other people, there are going to be any other arrests.
Do y'all think he had help? My thing was this. The only thing that makes me say possibly, I for sure think he did it. Now, the only thing that makes me say possibly, they said he ordered 2 chainsaws. Why do you need 2 chainsaws? You know what I'm saying? Why do you need 2 chainsaws? Why not just get 1? Why do you need 2? Unless you're a professional that know I need this type of chainsaw and this type of chainsaw. But who the fuck knows about chainsaws? Who the fuck knows about chainsaws, man, that cut up bodies? Nigga, you an average motherfucker, you just gonna get 1. An average nigga just gonna order 1 chainsaw. I'm not buying 2. So that's what makes me question, was there a second party? Did somebody come and help and help cut the body up? You gotta be a sick nigga to come help cut the body up. That's crazy. You know how much of a down ass homie you gotta be to help cut a body up of a little minor? You gotta be a sick nigga in the head. Hey man, can you come over here and help me cut? All right, I'm on the way, my boy. What?
But it also goes to the idea of other charges. If there's child pornography allegedly on his devices, or you're talking about a minor who was allegedly brought across state lines and there's sexual activity, is there sex trafficking? I did an episode on that too. But you also talk about the cause of death. And I think that one of the complicating factors here is her body was in that Tesla for quite some time, decomposed, dismembered. How exactly, I mean, will the defense bring their own forensic pathologist to try to push back and say, how do you know definitively it was multiple sharp force injuries? Is there something else that might have contributed to this? Do you have evidence of maybe the cleanup and the dismemberment, but not necessarily the murder? And going back to that other point about, how they know she bled out, I'm split on this. I interviewed Joseph Scott Morgan, and he basically said he believes there could be a witness to this. He also talked about the surveillance footage. It's also possible they're just making an assumption based on, they look at the cell phone data and they say, well, this is when she arrived, right, by the ride share. This is when her phone activity stopped. This is when David allegedly sent a text message to her 20 minutes later to maybe cover up his tracks, maybe create an alibi. And that's why they believe that he stabbed her or allegedly stabbed her and just watched her bleed out, because there was no calls to 911 or emergency services. So they might be making a guess here. I have to ask you one more part about this. You're in LA. I'm not in LA. You're in LA. There has been so much discussion about the coordination, the cooperation between the ME's office, the LAPD, the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. As somebody who covers these stories and somebody who's in LA, whether it's this case or other cases, is there disagreement amongst these different organizations? Are they usually in lockstep? Because there's been so many questions about why there's been a delay and why there's information that's been sealed. No mention of pregnancy in the prosecution's brief.
Right.
And yet the medical examiner now had to change the update to it's not known if she was pregnant. I think they did that for other reasons. But I'm just curious, in your experience.
That makes it even crazier if that's the situation. They did say it's a possibility. But if you cut her up knowing she was pregnant, like, that's even crazier. I think we all agree here, 100%, right? That we all agree David 100% did the shit. But do y'all think, let me know, do y'all think there was a second person as well? Not maybe, do y'all think, okay, let me ask this question. Do y'all think it was a second person that actually did the stabbing? Or was it a second person that was there and witnessed it and then helped them? Or do y'all think it was somebody who was called after it was done and came to assist? 3 different options. Let me know.
What should we be thinking about? And to be clear, when I interviewed Nathan Hochman, he said they're completely lockstep. There's no surprises. They're in it together. They know what they're doing. I'm just curious your perspective.
There is so much to unpack here. There are so many questions, Jesse, about the coordination and the timing. And I think the biggest thing that happened in this case that we don't typically see with charges of this magnitude, I mean, the LAPD made the arrest on, what was it, April 16th? And it wasn't until April 20th that charges were filed. So that alone raises questions about the coordination. Why were charges not filed first? Did LAPD do that because they were trying to force the DA's hand? And if so, what was the holdup? What was taking them so long to investigate when it seems to all of us like they already had overwhelming evidence? They had probable cause here. So a lot of questions. I don't want to give rise to any additional conspiracy theories. I think everybody on the internet is buzzing about all of this already, but just the facts of the case here. Arrest on April 16th, charges not filed until days later, and then now information being changed. I think that part about Celeste not being pregnant and then that not being able to be definitively determined, that may have something to do with this state of decomposition. But that is one of the questions that I think you've debunked on this podcast. There does not appear to be any definitive evidence pointing to the fact that Celeste was pregnant. If that does emerge at some point, that for sure is going to add additional charges onto what is already a stunning and an incredibly disturbing case against David.
Right.
Yeah, and just the final point before we wrap up, I'll say if prosecutors knew that she was pregnant, they would have 100% have included that. I mean, what better way to establish an alleged illegal sexual relationship to show he needed to allegedly keep her quiet, take the allegations are true. I mean, proof of pregnancy, they would definitely put that in there. Now, I will say, it seems to me, yes, because of the decomposition. Perhaps they can't definitively say that. And I think also they have to put unknown, considering the prosecutors say there were text messages about pregnancy and Plan B and things like that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They could prove everything else via text. I'm sure she told somebody. I'm sure if she was pregnant, I'm sure she would tell somebody. This is a kid we're talking about. She's going to be, scared out of her fucking mind. 14, 13 years old being pregnant. She's going to tell somebody via text or somebody on a Discord or something. You know how they communicate, Discord and all that type of shit. But rest in peace, Celeste, man. It's a sad situation. If that is the case, oh, man. If you killed, and on top of that she was pregnant, they're going to crucify you, brother. They're going to crucify you regardless, but they're going to crucify the fuck out of you if she was pregnant.
I think the investigative portion of that is what led to it. Julia, thank you so much for taking the time. I really, really appreciate it. I would love for you to come back when we have the next hearing now in June, see what happens. But Julia Dang, thank you so much for taking the time. Great reporting.
All right, man. There you have it. That is the latest update. So I guess the next one will be, going back to court in June. Let's see what happens. What's going on? Let me know your thoughts on this situation, man. How do y'all see this playing out? How long do y'all see this trial going? Do y'all think there is a possibility that he might walk away? And what would that, that would go, man, that would be crazy. That would be crazy. If he was to walk away and get not guilty from this, I don't know how. Because, right now, there's no other suspects in our minds that has been spoke on. All signs lead to David. 100%. I don't see him beating this at all. And how do y'all think? Well, let's just wait. Let's wait till the next one to ask that question because it's too soon. But do y'all think they're going to do the death penalty on his ass? That's what I want to know. Do y'all think they're going to actually do the death penalty on him? But let me know what y'all think. I'm going to give y'all 2 seconds to smash the like. And as always, get ready for the next reaction.